It is time now for our State House Insiders. Tonight, our Republican strategist, Dave Wilson, our Democrat strategist, Antoine Seawright. Guys,
It's good to see you.
welcome back into the studio.
Yeah,
Nice
it's
to
good to be
have
back.
you here.
Yeah.
All right, the Republican presidential primary is coming up February 24th. The deadline to file the paperwork was earlier this week. We end up with 10 candidates in South Carolina, Dave. Is that a surprise, or you thought it could be fewer or less?
Thought maybe a little bit fewer. It really does make the math a very simple thing for Donald Trump because he has such a lead right now in the polls. And the thing to keep in mind with this, folks, as you're at home, a Republican primary only requires a plurality of votes to be able to win. So you only have to have one more vote than the person who's in second place. And it's going to be very hard for anybody else to come back and be able to overcome what Donald Trump probably has if you take a look at polling right now for Donald Trump in South Carolina.
Trumpism has really inserted itself throughout the Republican Party. Therefore, anyone not named Donald J. Trump are simply running for political exercise. The fact of the matter is, every poll I've seen over the past several months since this process started has had Donald Trump with a plus 20-point victory in this state. And so that's why you see non-traditional allies, in theory, to Donald Trump lining up to support him in the state, because it's very reflective of who the Republican Party has become. The Republican Party is now calcified to be Donald Trump's party once again.
You mentioned Donald Trump, and you think of MAGA, Make America Great Again. That's his slogan when he ran 2016 and again here in 2024 for the next election. Jamie Harrison, the chairman of the National Democratic Party, calls Nikki Haley a MAGA minion. What do you make of that? What does
That's
that
just
mean?
a creative way of saying, trying to embrace Trumpism and run away from Trump. The truth of the matter is the MAGA extremism has hijacked the Republican Party. So the traditional known Republican candidate and or supporter does not exist, and now they've become this extreme party who really has forgotten about the core fundamental principles of what a traditional Ronald Reagan Republican looked like. And it's sad on one case, but it's exciting opportunity on the other hand for Democrats, because now we get to define the party as extremists who really do not care about the core values they once preached and tried to anchor themselves into.
It's just really interesting because I think Jamie's taking a stab right now at Nikki Haley on this issue from the standpoint that if you can do anything to wrap her in Trump, because she's gaining momentum. We saw it in South Carolina. If Nikki Haley gains momentum, watch out, because that's how she snowballed herself right into the governor's office in 2010. It's how she did it again in 2014, and she's doing it right now in the polls. But the interesting part about it is the national polls are also showing that she's more aligning a group of folks behind her who are considering themselves never Trumpers, instead of those who are supporting Donald Trump. And so it really kind of flies in the face and makes us realize Jamie Harrison's just sitting here playing Democrat politics, trying to put a MAGA label on Nikki Haley.
Well, the truth of the matter is not one person running in the Republican preference primary other than Donald Trump can define their differences between them and Donald Trump.
Well, that's what I think the debate will be really good on that coming up next week.
But we've seen several debates, and not one person can separate themselves from Trumpism. And all the chairman is saying in a very creative, handsome way is the fact that she's trying to represent and embrace the extremism we know it takes to win a Republican primary. And without Donald Trump and Trumpism, there's no pathway to victory in the Republican primary, whether you like it or not.
You mentioned, we're talking about Nikki Haley here. Tim Scott also running for the Republican presidential primary. Senator Tim Scott. So polling in South Carolina, the latest poll numbers I saw show both of them far behind the frontrunner, former President Donald Trump. Dave, I know you say she's gaining in the polls, but if she doesn't do well here in her home state, if she doesn't do well, if Tim Scott doesn't do well here in February, do they bow out?
Oh, absolutely they do. I think if you can't win a home state or have at least a decent showing, I don't think that Nikki Haley can win in South Carolina with the numbers that Donald Trump has right now. Will Tim Scott be able to make it through South Carolina? He's going to be in the South Carolina on the ballot in February. But will he go beyond that? I don't know, because keep in mind, a third of all candidates, we have seen this historically on both sides, a third of all candidates who are running for president, when they get through Iowa and New Hampshire, they get to South Carolina, by the time they finish in South Carolina, a third of them have quit.
Well, let's be clear. South Carolina will play its traditional role of providing muscle memory to the race, and that's true in the Democratic preference primary. It'll be true in this race. But for Tim Scott, it's Iowa or nothing.
Right.
If he does not survive Iowa, you can cancel. You can cancel the rest of the political holidays. And for Nikki Haley, it's what happens in New Hampshire, because in the Republican primary, it's win and take all. Unlike the Democratic primary, where it's a delegate game, it's
Right.
win or lose in the Republican primary, and that's going to define the race very early.
I want to touch on one other local subject, and that is the calls for an investigation in Richland District 1, teachers being reassigned, parents, teachers upset about it. 6th District Congressman Jim Clyburn weighing in on this, basically yesterday saying that politics and race playing an issue here with investigations into school districts that are being led by black superintendents.
Well, what we've seen across the state, we've seen black superintendents dismissed or fired as a result of school board changes, and this Moms for Liberty, whatever the correct title of the group are, they are really playing in school board races and local races across the state. And as a result of them winning and participating in races, we see black superintendents being removed, and we see this amplified effort of targeting school districts that are predominantly African American. We just traditionally do not see that in non-African American strength school districts. So I find it ironic, and I find it to be true. Now, we'll just see how this plays out over elections to come, but this Moms for Liberty group is really trying to put a foothold and have a say-so on what curriculum in schools look like in the state.
But we have always said, Antoine, that the government that's the closest to you has the biggest impact on you. And keep in mind, school districts take more money from you personally than just about any other government function that there is. And so Moms for Liberty, if they are making the impact that they're making right now, it may be because they are beginning to recognize that they can have a voice, and more people need to be putting their voices into the arguments that go on.
Except these are mostly out-of-town people who do not have local South Carolinians.
Moms for Liberty are not out-of-town people. They're not.
These are out-of-town people who are funded by out-of-town funds, who will have an impact on local school districts. And ironically, they're targeting school districts and school boards that have strong African-American presence.
I think when you start to look at it, you're going to find parents in local communities who are wanting their voices heard.
All right. Dave Wilson, Antoine Seawright. Guys, nice to have you in studio.
It's great to be
Appreciate it
back.
so very much.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. A quick break. We're back.